Good morning. This is Rudy coming at you live from Palm Beach in Florida. It is Monday. It is February the 27th. I have a special guest with me, and his name is Daniel Major, and he is the CEO of Goviex Uranium. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So just a couple of questions, and thank you for taking the time to join us. In our investor group, we have a number of people who are interested in investing in energy in general, and many of them are invested in uranium specifically. So maybe to kick it off with, introduce us to Daniel Major.
Yeah, I'm a mining engineer from the UK by background. Been in this industry now for over 35 years. Started my mining career in uranium in what is now Namibia, but was then Southwest Africa. And I've done work across Africa. I've worked in Russia. I've worked in Quebec. I've worked in South America. And I've worked in commodities as far apart as diamonds, platinum, manganese, molybdenum, pulp and paper, gold, and spent time as an equity analyst. I was a rated equity analyst for 7 years as well. So kind of fairly diverse from the things I've looked at and been involved in. Last 10 years have been with Goviex, working through our projects. Came on board as the technical engineering side once the geologists had finished finding the uranium.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. That's is quite a background. Then I think sort of almost as an automatic segue, let's talk a little bit about Goviex and introduce us to Goviex Uranium.
Yeah, Goviex has been around for a while. It was originally founded in 2007 by a gentleman by the name of Govin Freeland. And for those people you have investing or used to the mining market, he's the son of Robert Freeland, the serially successful mining entrepreneur. Saw an opportunity to get into the uranium sector. He was resident in China. His father's mantra always is if you're going to mine something the Chinese are going to want. And clearly with a very strong view on growth in nuclear development, driving the uranium industry and the nuclear industry a large part at the moment, that was obviously the right choice to make. Goviex then started one of the largest drilling campaigns anywhere in the world in any commodity at the time. So between 2008 and 2012, completed over 650,000 meters of drilling to find a really large mineral resource within one of our exploration licenses, and we have 5 of them. And that's when I joined the company, took it all the way through the permitting stages at the Madaouela project. So the Madaouela project in Niger now has some 120 million pounds of uranium, but the key is it's fully mine permitted. So it's got all of its legal requirements from government. It's got its environmental permits. We have a lot of exploration upside still, but what also helps it a lot is it's got a lot of infrastructure. Niger last year produced 25% of all the uranium consumed in Europe. It's been for a long time, since the 1970s, has been the 4th or 5th largest uranium producing nation in the world. So we benefit from that by being next to all the infrastructure that was set up for the French mines. They're literally next door to us. So there's power, there's people, there's roads and water, surprisingly, in the middle of the Sahara Desert. But we consider how we use that water and do what we can from an ESG perspective to reduce our consumption and impact on it. Same as power as well. We look at renewables to try and reduce our carbon footprint. And that project at the moment, we finished its final feasibility study last year. We're currently in the mine financing stage, the early stages of that, and working on the offtake contract. So the target is to get that project by the end of this year financed, 2 years to construction. So effectively 3 years from now, we'd be hoping to produce uranium from Niger, from a new uranium mine. In about 2016, 2017, we did a couple of transactions and we picked up 2 projects contiguous in Zambia, which we've combined to what is now called the Muntanga project. It's fully mine permitted, again, great infrastructure. Long life, Madaouela's 21 years, this one's 11 years. Again, a lot of exploration upside. Muntanga are now taking through its final feasibility study, which should be completed into the first half of next year. And then that will go through its financing stages for the construction stage going forward. And then lastly, we have an exploration play in Mali called Falea, which we're at the moment currently in a sale program with to a third party, Africa Energy. They are going to basically run it, will be a major shareholder in it. But the real focus is on these development projects that we have.
All right, thank you very much. It's an overview of projects that's very beneficial for the majority of people. They wouldn't have that more detailed or minute information related to the specific, well, now two major projects, right? With
Correct.
the sale pending on the last one, you got two large projects on the go. Best of success with that, by the way.
Thank you.
If we sort of think, of uranium, sort of at a high level, the proverbial 50,000-foot view, we see countries like Germany shutting down nuclear reactors or making a lot of noise about shutting them down, and then sort of saying, well, let's wait a little bit because we need some more energy. And then, of course, we see other countries, including right next door to them, for instance, France, doing well. Plus, there's a huge demand. I think currently, from memory, there's about 150 nuclear reactors, under various stages of development across the world. So maybe, sort of very briefly, at a macro level, what is the uranium thesis? What does it look like for you?
It's not looked as good as it is at the moment for a long, long time. We now have the fastest development rate of construction of nuclear reactors that we've seen for the last 25 years, and really driven around clean carbon energy. While there's a lot of support for renewables, it's become increasingly clear that even if you want renewables, you have to have a solid base of clean energy. And that cannot always just be gas, which is still a carbon source, just a lower carbon source, but just not as bad as coal.
Whereas that word, it's that phraseology of natural gas, right? Sounds good.
Yeah, yes, fresh, healthy gas. Yeah. So that has been the single biggest drive, really, since COP26. Which was compounded around that time as well, if you remember the beginning of the energy crisis regarding energy pricing. And energy pricing went crazy, and then gone with the days of cheap gas, which just kept everything under, pressed under, and now you've got less than cheap gas out there. And that really has kind of underpinned the political change that's gone around. And as you pointed out, even Germany, which was anti-nuclear, has had a few quakes recently. Countries like Holland, which were anti-nuclear, are now going to build small modular reactors. The Eastern European countries have no choice. They can't really do renewables. It is, it's cold most of the time, and there's not a lot of places to build. China is currently at 57 gigawatts, going up to 70 by the end of this decade, and will be 140 by the end of the next decade. It's a massive increase coming through. The US is currently committing $6.4 billion to rescuing and helping grow nuclear reactors. And these are all the big reactors. Mm-hmm. And now you've got this plethora of technology out there for small modular reactors. So a big reactor is 1.3 gigawatts of power. So 1,300 megawatts. Small reactors go from 10 megawatts to 300 megawatts. And what makes these exciting is their designs are unpressurized. So you can use normal steel. A lot of them are using new technology. Some of them using some really exciting new technologies are coming through. But you can take down a coal-fired power station and just install a 300 megawatt reactor in its place, because the power line is already there. The grid's already in place. For far off places, then obviously you can truck in a 10 megawatt reactor, and you don't recharge it for 15 years. I mean, it literally will happily sit there operating for 15 years before it needs to reload. So there's a lot of new areas that nuclear is looking at. Nuclear is becoming very clear for things like hydrogen, desalination. There's even efforts to look at marine shipping. Obviously, we already have aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines sailing around, but there is that. There's going to be some issues on that, on portage and those things. But there's a lot of new areas to go forward. And so makes nuclear very, very impressive. What's exciting for us on the other end of the thing is that we've just gone through a horrific bear market in uranium post-Fukushima. Yeah. And so now we're sitting in a position where there's about 190 million pounds of uranium is consumed annually, and we only currently dig out of the ground 130. And that gap has now got to be filled. It used to be filled by secondary material inventory, that when people had too much, but because of the pressure with cheap gas, they were selling, not buying it, they were just using it up. And then recycled material, stocks of recycled material are going down, and a lot of recycled material does come out of Russia. So there's obviously a lot of constraints on that going forward. So you're now in a situation where the piper has to be paid. If you want new projects to come on, you have to have higher prices, and that's across the board. And that's why Goviex is sitting there. Not only can we come into production at a relatively low price, we use $65. The term forward curve is already $65 for when we would come into production, is that we can come into production 2026, right when the utilities mainly have gaps in their portfolio going forward. And this problem gets worse going forward because we haven't had a new mine since, well, 2010. And so a lot of the older mines are coming to their lives as well, and they're quite big. For example, I mean, the best example would be Cigar Lake, which is 15 million pounds of uranium a year. So just about 8-9% of world supply. At the end of this decade, it ceases to operate as it's run out of material.
Yeah.
And so that's the thesis of why nuclear is looking good for us, and more importantly, why uranium, the feed source for the nuclear industry, is very robust as an investment idea at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much for that overview. So maybe it's actually sort of almost an automatic segue. So you know, the investment thesis for Goviex specifically is somewhat covered by what you just shared with us, but at the same time, we have this investment opportunity in front of us right now, and I guess the you know, sort of proverbial $1-million question is, why Goviex?
Why? Why not? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously, as you say, the first part is that the underlying commodity is great. The second part of that is that the company is permitted. It takes you 6 to 10 years to permit a mine in Canada. So you might like Canadian projects, but by the time they come through from net present value point of view, if you did it from now until when they could even start, you're timing out. Relative value, we're massively undervalued relative to our peers. You know, about a third the index. We have those permits, and I think I would put it into context. If you look at the previous cycles, in the 2004 to 2007 cycle, the outperforming uranium shares out of the basket were the two companies that built new mines in that cycle. So they went from being developers to being producers, and the most famous of those was a company called Paladin Energy that went from 7 cents to $7 over those 3 to 4 years. In the 2011 cycle, this was a period of transaction and M&A, and the majority of the big takeouts were all African takeouts. So, you know, our background is a developer. We're here to build our mines, but we also recognize sometimes somebody wants to pay you too much to not build it, and so they can build it. So, you know, we would look at those scenarios as well. So, you know, this is a company, proven projects. They've reached their feasibility study. We're in the debt financing. We have the permits. We're ready to take that curve up to the next stage, which is to become a producer and de-risk the pounds in the ground and generate revenue. And that's where you really see that turnaround in the classic mining curve.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think, you know, from our side, like obviously we have limited time. So I appreciate all that content and context to what it is that you're doing. And I would add best of success as you go forward. And maybe just to wrap it up, I'll give you an opportunity to add anything in closing if you wish to do so. That might be you know, of interest to our community, and then we can wrap it up.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we've gone through the key arguments, but I think if anyone has anything that, you know, are interested in what I've had to say, you can easily find out more information at our website, goviex.com. And if you've got any questions, info at goviex.com, they always come through to me and we answer them very, very quickly. So it's, you know, uranium is looking great as an energy source, and we certainly think Goviex well positioned for where uranium is going and nuclear is going. So really, thank you very much. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I will actually, what I'll do is I'll add a link to goviex.com in the description under the video, so people can just click on the hyperlink and then go from there. So yeah, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all the information. It's great to actually learn firsthand about Goviex uranium. A lot of people in our community have many chats via the YouTube site and via Twitter and things like that about your company.
Okay,
Now,
brilliant.
that's not necessarily a bad thing, so the
Yeah.
more people talk about it, the better, So from my side, thank you as well. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the information that you shared with us.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate this video. Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.